There's this particular part of the brain that you should know about because you have this particular part of the brain. It comes as standard equipment on the human body, and it has advantages, but it also has disadvantages. So the best part of your brain is just behind your forehead, called the prefrontal cortex or the frontal lobe. Now, this part of the brain is the part of the brain that is designed to be on most of the time. It is known to execute executive function of your thoughts and your behaviors and your beliefs. It's sort of the CEO, and it's a moral CEO, director of the brain operations, and it thinks long term. It considers others inside the decision making. It considers others with the impact of the decisions. It's sort of the adult part of the brain. And then there's that part of the brain that has advantages when there's a scary situation. And when you're afraid, this part of the brain that I was just talking about, the prefrontal cortex or the frontal lobe, it actually gets shut down. So you don't need the deep thinking, moral, ethical part of the brain when you're frightened. And when you're frightened, in fear, and there's many things that cause the fear that you're not aware of. But when you're in fear, they call it you activate this other part of the brain, which is at the back of your head, more near the bottom and more near your spine. It's called the limbic system. It's also known as the fight or flight system. It can be also known as the R complex, the letter R, and that usually stands for reptile. The reptile brain, the lizard brain, or they call it the hind brain. Now, this is the way the whole brain works. So when you're at peace, you got that prefrontal cortex on, the frontal lobe, and things go good for a society where everybody, or most of the time, has the frontal lobe on because it's high IQ, thinks long term, very mature, considers other people, considers the long-term implications of all the decisions. And in the prefrontal cortex is where morality actually lives. So what makes you kind and compassionate and care for others and put sort of the tribe above all else, that's in the prefrontal cortex, just behind your forehead. Now, if something fearful happens, oddly enough, again, that part of the brain shuts off. And there's reasons for that, because let's say it's a fearful situation where there's a mugger, and you might be with your family. Just say it's you and your daughter or you and your son, and the mugger comes at you both. And the mugger's aggressive. Now, you have these systems are inside your brain for a reason. They control your body in ways that are complex, but they have function. So if the mugger comes at you and your child, the deep, compassionate, moral, long-term thinking part of the brain, it's not really a good part of the brain to leave on if you're going to defend from the mugger, because let's say you have to kill the mugger to save your child. If you had the deep thinking, long-term consequence, high IQ, moral part of the brain on, it could interfere with the defense and protection of your child. So you can see why the systems are designed the way they are. So when you're afraid, that part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex with all these great attributes, it gets shut down. And that limbic system comes on, the lizard brain, the hind brain, the R complex. And that one has a really low IQ. It does not consider the tribe. It considers the situation at hand. and it says, what do I need to do to be safe now? Screw everything else. And you can see it's well designed. This is how we've survived. And if something's scary, you deal with it, and you deal with it in a very aggressive and vicious way. But all the things that make you human, and that's why they call it the lizard brain. It's not called like, the second human brain. It's called this like animal part of the brain because it has animal instincts and makes us more like an animal. And what makes us human and what supposedly developed last is that prefrontal cortex that sets us apart from animal instincts or running our lives like animals. So you can see it's designed pretty good in fearful situations. You can, take care of business, not think too much about it, get really aggressive, go low IQ, and really not think about the moral or long-term consequences of your actions. Here's the problem. There's this group of people who rule us. I'm pretty sure you know who they are, and they're getting pretty aggressive. And if you haven't figured out what I'm talking about, you're probably in the limbic system. You're probably in the fight or flight a bit too much, because again, it's not a high IQ system. And yeah, so there's this group, pretty aggressive, and they know they're in the ruling position for a reason, because they know how to herd us like cattle, lower our IQs and get us moving in one direction or the other. But they know these two systems, these two competing systems. They know how to turn on our animal instincts. And they know that if they can turn on the animal instincts, make us afraid, we go low IQ and we don't think about the future, and we protect ourselves and don't care about what happens to ourselves long term or what happens to the tribe. And one of their favorite applications of this, I'm not too sure if you're aware, but coffee in the morning or coffee anytime activates this part of the brain. And this group are heavily invested in coffee shops, heavily invested in the coffee trade. And this isn't the only substance that lowers IQ and destroys long-term thinking and makes us reactive and turns off our morality, turns off our ethics. They're masters of this kind of stuff. So if you need any more information that'll really help you out in life so that you can get the best part of your brain back online, so you can make better decisions, protect yourself, protect the tribe, look at your life through a high IQ lens, get on my email list, email me at info@jchristoff.com. This is Jason Christoff. Thanks for listening.